There's not really another way around this one. This week was a very bad week for wrestling. A couple of people passed away. I'd just like to give them their minute of time, just because these people have had impacts on all people from all over the world, from all cultures, all races, and I think wrestling is something which really does bring people together in a way that a lot of other forms of medium just don't. I think the only thing that does it more so, I would say, is music. Other than that, I think wrestling has such a crucial part and a crucial role in the way we take in story and the way that we interact with with people who are larger than life. And unfortunately, Shad Gaspard, he was a WWE wrestler from before when I started watching the product again. But since I did start watching it in about 2011, 2012, I went back and actually learned a lot about wrestling history. And him specifically and JTG were a group that did stand out to me. They had a lot of charisma. I think that they could have gone even further as a tag team, honestly. And it's something which, in retrospect, you see these little cliques and you see these groups in wrestling and you say, "Oh, I think these guys could have done more." I don't know what the reason was that it didn't happen. I don't know why it didn't happen, but I think that this guy was a presence. He was a big guy. He was super athletic, and he passed away doing something that is heroic. Something which I think you'd like to say you'd do, and I think most parents would do, but you don't know unless you're in that moment, in that situation. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one. A very, very sad way of passing away. But I think if there's any small semblance of hope in there, it's that his son did survive, and that's what he wanted in that moment. I think it's a super tough thing. I know a lot of wrestlers have come out and talked about him and what a great worker he was, and he was just a really good guy. Like, there are very few guys who you get that vibe off of, and he was one of them. Just genuine, and I think that you have an impact on everyone's life around you, and I think that will go from there on to the next point, which is having an impact on other people's lives. Hana Kimura, she was a Japanese wrestler. She was on a Netflix show. I didn't watch the show. My sister does watch the show, though. And it was called Terraced House. It's like I know I'm super monotone. I don't know why. I just feel very, very odd about it. She was on basically a Big Brother type show over there, and allegedly something happened on the show that caused her to get a lot of abuse online. And she was also a wrestler. And apparently the abuse was just so much that she ended up taking her life. Now that's shit. That is extraordinarily terrible. It's something which you can't take that type of stuff back. And she was obviously in a place right then and there that she felt that was what she needed to do, and it's not for me to say that for me to judge her on that. It's a very, very tough thing to be going through when you're in that mental state and when you're in that position, and you think that there's only one way out of something, even though there are other options. It's not an easy way to work around it. But there are things that you can do to try and find help in these situations. I think it is difficult for people who are in the spotlight in some way. I think it does probably make it more difficult with these types of situations. But apparently the cyberbullying was just too much. I have a odd relationship with cyberbullying or bullying in general. I take a very opposite stance to a lot of people. As someone who has been bullied, I sort of view it as in some ways, and this sounds very, very weird, but it's just my opinion, and I in this case it might be wrong. I don't know, but I think bullying is something which just cannot be eradicated from the world. It's not something that can be done. It's impossible because people are dicks, and you can't just, that's not going to go away. You know, I think that maybe social media can play some role in helping prevent cyberbullying to the extent it has been shown to grow in the past, because I think that I was bullied a lot as like a 10 to 15, 16 year old, probably even younger, I don't know, can't remember, I forget bits of my childhood, honestly. But the odd thing is that type of bullying, in an odd way, because of the way I was brought up, sort of made me, I'd like to think stronger. And that's not thank you to the bullies, I guess, in some way, but it's almost like that type of stuff sort of prepared me in a very odd way to deal with certain aspects of the world, and people in the real world, in real life. And I'm not saying that, you need to be bullied to turn out to be a good person, or you need to be bullied to turn out to be someone who is a good member of society. But for me, I know that it probably did have some type of impact on that. To be like, one, I don't want to be that person, but also, in an odd way, if I see someone being bullied, I will endeavour to stop it if it is in a very bad state. Whether that's just on the street, whether that's in a restaurant, I'll step in. I have stepped in, and people being harassed. I don't know if hadn't been through the stuff I'd been through. I don't know if that version of me would stand up and do something. And I think the version of me now, having been through the things I have, small things, but it would make me be like, you need to go and do something if you can. And more often than not, you do, if you have the ability to do it. I don't know. It's easy to say don't be a dick, but I don't think people really understand the lasting effect of their actions. And especially at like 12 or 15 or 16, you don't really get the long-term ramifications that can have on someone. Some people will grow from it and get stronger from it, and some people will just absolutely crumble. And that's the result you don't want to have, but it does happen, and it's just probably as likely as the alternative result happening, and that person growing from it and getting stronger and being a bigger and better person because of it. Cyberbullying is a slightly different case, though. I think that it's a much more viral type of problem. I think that it can really just explode in an instant, and it can, I guess, be overbearing. If you're being bullied by 1 or 2 people or 3 people, that's one thing, but there are so many other people out there who are not doing that to you, and you can find solace in other people if that is what is necessary, and if that's what helps you. Or you can try and work through it yourself. But if it's online and there are 10,000 people saying something, or 50,000 people saying very, very demonstrable, disgusting things about you and to you, I can see why that might be too much for me. I choose to not acknowledge bad comments. That's just my thing, because it just doesn't help anyone. I don't block them, because I think blocking is also a bad thing. I think it just leads to more problems, because if you block someone, you're basically shutting them down. They're more likely to just hate you even more. So it's an odd one to try and figure out exactly what the right thing to do is, but I just like to say again, super sad thing. She was really, really young. Hana was like 23 or 22. She was super young. I remember watching some of her matches on Ring of Honor maybe a couple of years ago now, and she was very talented. I think had she had a longer career, her mum was also a wrestler, but if she'd had a longer career, I think she probably would have been like a very, very big superstar in the world. And it's a sad thing that didn't happen, and someone didn't get to fulfill their full potential, and I think a potential that a lot of people saw in her. So yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one, but wrestling just gives so much, and the wrestlers give so much to everyone, and I don't think people appreciate it. People inside the industry do. People who watch the product do. But if you're not inside that sphere, it's almost like a thrown away art form, and I think it's sad that people don't give it the recognition and appreciation that I think it does deserve. Whether I like the WWE product right now, or TNA, or Ring of Honor, or AEW, you know, you go through phases of being like, that's trash programming, or that's good, or that's bad. But you still have to appreciate the effort and time that's gone in for these people to become the professionals that they are. And they do it for our entertainment at the end of the day. And it's sad when this happens in general. There's a moth. But like the Shad one is a hard one, and the Hana one is just something which you'd like to say could have been avoided, but that it's not. We didn't experience the things she had in that moment, you know, to have led to that scenario that she ended up taking her life. But it's sad. It is. Hope the families. It's not an easy thing to move on from. You never really move on from this type of stuff. It's sort of just, I don't know. It's a, you sort of always have it with you, but instead of letting it control you in some ways, you sort of, long term, if you work around it properly and you understand it, you sort of can control it in some ways. You turn it around and you take it from something that is a big effect on you to something that you choose when to let it have an effect on you. And I think that it's not an easy process. It takes a long time to adjust. And yeah, rest in peace. Rest in peace. And all the best to the families. Yeah, that's it.